My dad sold my inheritance to fund my brother's beach getaway, and I'm still reeling from the betrayal. I thought he was kidding when he said the money from my grandmother's house, my house, would pay for Liam's vacation. I even laughed, picturing him joking over Sunday dinner. But a week later, my lawyer called, and the laughter died. That house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was my childhood, my safe haven, the only place I felt wanted. Now it's gone, and I'm left picking up the pieces of a family that never really cared. Growing up, I was the invisible kid. My parents, Mark and Susan, poured every ounce of attention into Liam, my younger brother. At 24, he's still crashing on their couch, jobless, yet somehow the golden child with endless potential. Me, I was the one who had to scrape by, the one who learned early that nobody was coming to save me. Except Grandma Ellen. She was my rock. When Mom and Dad were too busy fawning over Liam's every burp, Grandma was there, braiding my hair, teaching me card games, or just listening. Her little house with its creaky porch and lavender bushes was my real home. She practically raised me while my parents played favorites and ignored her. They barely visited, never helped when she got sick. Liam? He couldn't be bothered to call. But when she died 3 years ago, her will was clear, the house was mine. I wasn't shocked. She knew I'd cherish it unlike the rest of them. I hadn't moved in yet. I had my own apartment, but I'd swing by to check on it, walk the rooms, feel her presence in the faded wallpaper. It was my anchor proof I'd mattered to someone. So when Dad dropped that line about selling it for Liam's much-needed vacation, I thought it was a sick prank. A week later, my lawyer Rachel called. "Ethan, there's a problem with the property." My stomach sank. She explained the house was sold, and my signature was on the documents, except I hadn't signed a damn thing. Furious, I drove to the house that afternoon, needing to see it for myself. The driveway was wrong, 2 unfamiliar cars parked where Grandma's old hatchback used to sit. My heart pounded as I climbed the steps and rang the bell. A guy in his late 30s answered, a woman hovering behind him. "Can I help you?" he asked, frowning. I swallowed hard. "This is my house." "Who are you?" The woman let out a nervous laugh. "We bought it last month." "From the owner." I felt like I'd been slapped. "You what?" The guy crossed his arms. "Bought it fair and square. What's the issue?" I stared at them, at their shiny SUV at the porch swing that wasn't mine anymore. My phone showed no emails, no texts, no hint of a sale. But I knew. I didn't say another word, just turned, got in my car, and floored it to my parents' place. Liam was home, sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone like the world owed him a favor. He barely glanced up. "Yo, what's up?" I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "Where's Mom and Dad?" He shrugged. "Out." Why? I took a shaky breath. "Because they sold my house." He blinked, then nodded, casual, as if I'd mentioned the weather. "Oh, yeah, that. They'll be back soon." He went back to his phone. I stood there staring, waiting for something, guilt, surprise, anything. Nothing. He didn't care. Not one bit. I waited. An hour later, Mom and Dad walked in, chatting like nothing was wrong. I didn't let them sit. "What the hell did you do?" Dad sighed, like I was the one being dramatic. "Ethan, calm down. It was unfair you got the house. Your mother and I had plans." I blinked, stunned. "Plans?" He nodded, unfazed. "Liam's been stressed. He needs a vacation. And a car. He's got potential." "Ethan." I almost laughed again, but my throat was tight. "So, you forged documents and sold my house." Mom shifted uncomfortably, but Dad just shrugged. "It's done." I shook my head, voice low. "I'm not letting this go." I stormed out. Their faces burned into my mind. Driving home, my hands gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. Dad's voice echoed, calm, dismissive, like stealing from me was no big deal. Liam needed a vacation. A car. Meanwhile, the only home I'd ever loved was gone. I parked outside my apartment and sat there, rage boiling. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. That's when I realized nothing would be the same. I was done playing the forgotten son, but my dad and Liam had no clue the storm I was about to unleash. Sitting in my car outside my apartment, I could still hear Dad's smug voice. Liam's got potential. Potential for what another all-inclusive trip to the Maldives, the house Grandma Ellen's house. My house was gone, sold behind my back with my forged signature. I wasn't just hurt. I was livid. They'd crossed a line and I wasn't letting it slide. I needed a plan and I needed it fast. That night, I called my friend Caleb, a lawyer who didn't just win cases, he obliterated opponents. I spilled everything: Dad's betrayal, Liam's indifference, the strangers in my house. By the time I finished, Caleb was fuming. "Meet me at my office tomorrow," he said, voice sharp. "Bring every scrap you've got, emails, texts, Grandma's will bank statements. If it mentions the house, I want it. We're nailing these bastards." I barely slept, my mind racing with memories of Grandma's laughter, Dad's smirk, Liam's lazy shrug. They thought I'd roll over. They were dead wrong. The next morning, I hauled a box of documents to Caleb's office. Grandma's will, crisp and clear, named me as the sole heir to the house. Old texts from her gushed about how she wanted me to live there someday. Bank statements showed no deposits in my name from any sale. Caleb skimmed it all, then leaned back, grinning like a shark. "Your dad's a moron." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" He spun his monitor toward me, pointing at a scanned document, a consent form for the sale with my signature. Except it wasn't mine. The loops were too loopy, the slant all wrong. "He forged it," Caleb said. "And get this, the notary's already on thin ice for shady deals. This is fraud, Ethan, and it's sloppy." I exhaled a weightlifting. "So what's the play?" Caleb cracked his knuckles. "We send a formal demand. They return the $200,000 from the sale in 48 hours, or we sue. If they don't pay, we go for everything: his house, his savings, his freedom." I nodded, a spark of satisfaction flaring. "Do it." A week later, Caleb fired off the demand letter. The next day, my phone buzzed. "Dad." I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Let's see how he squirms." "Ethan," he started, voice too calm. "I got a letter from a lawyer?" "You're being ridiculous." I stayed silent, letting him stew. "This is a family matter. You don't drag your own father to court. You don't ruin my life over money." I snorted. "You didn't just take money. You stole from me, forged my signature. That's fraud, Dad. Jail time fraud." A long pause. Then he sighed, and I caught it, a tremor of panic. "Listen, I'll give you some of the money." Not all, but I laughed cold. "You can't negotiate." He tried again, voice tighter. "I'll talk to Liam. Maybe we can work something out." I froze. Liam? I hadn't told him I knew about the forgery. Not the notary, not the signature, none of it. I'd only said he stole, which meant he already knew he was caught. And if he knew, did Liam know about this? I asked, voice low. He hesitated too long, then hung up. My stomach twisted. Liam wasn't just the spoiled brat coasting on Dad's favoritism. He was in on it. That casual nod when I'd confronted him, the way he didn't even flinch, it wasn't ignorance. It was guilt. I grabbed my keys and drove back to their house, rage simmering. Mom opened the door, startled. "Ethan, what are you—" I brushed past her. Liam was where he always was, couch phone, zero cares. I stood over him. "How long have you known?" He didn't look up. "Known what?" I stepped closer, voice like ice. "That Dad forged my signature." His fingers twitched, eyes flicking to mine. "I don't know what you're, liar." I cut him off. "I know you knew. Just say it." Mom sighed behind me. "Ethan, stop. We're family." I whirled on her. "Family doesn't steal from each other." Liam's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, closed it, then muttered, "Fine." I knew. My chest tightened, but I kept my face blank. "For how long?" He looked away. "Dad told me before he sold it. Said it wasn't a big deal, you had your own place, and you needed a vacation more than I needed my inheritance." His face reddened. I didn't take the money. I crossed my arms. So who booked the Maldives trip? Silence. And the car Dad was going to buy you? More silence. I shook my head. You knew where the money came from and took it anyway. Liam shrugged, defiant. It's not like you needed the house. I laughed, bitter. It wasn't about need, it was mine. Grandma left it to me. But you and Dad decided that didn't matter. I turned for the door. Liam jumped up. Wait, what are you going to do? I glanced back. You'll see. I walked out, their voices fading behind me. That night I called Caleb. It's not just the money, I said, voice steady. I want everything we can take. Their house, their savings, Dad in court for fraud. All of it. Caleb didn't blink. Let's burn it down. I hung up, staring at the ceiling. They thought this was just about a house. They had no idea I was coming for their whole world. Then my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number and my blood ran cold. The text from the unknown number was a single line. You're tearing this family apart. No name, but I knew it was Mom. Her guilt trips were as subtle as a sledgehammer. I deleted it and turned off my phone. Dad and Liam had stolen my inheritance, forged my signature, and sold Grandma Ellen's house for a vacation and a car, and I was the bad guy. No, they'd lit this fire, and I was done feeling sorry for them. Caleb, my lawyer, was ready to torch their world, and I was all in. But that text lingered a splinter in my mind, and I wondered just how far they'd go to stop me. The lawsuit hit like a freight train. Caleb filed for the $200,000 from the house sale plus damages and pushed for fraud charges against Dad. He wasn't messing around. Every motion was a gut punch, demanding Dad's financial records, asset details, the works. Dad's calls started coming daily, each one a different flavor of desperate. First, he was furious. You're out of your mind. Ethan, this is family business, not a courtroom circus. Then came the guilt. I thought I was helping Liam. You'd really put your own dad in jail over a house, finally bargaining. Fine, I'll scrape together some cash. Not all of it, but enough. Just drop this. Each time I cut him off. You did this to yourself. Click. His voice cracked on the last call, and for a split second I remembered him teaching me to ride a bike, his hand steady on the seat. I shoved the memory down. That man was gone. Liam, though, radio silence. No calls, no texts, not even a snarky DM. I'd expected him to grovel or at least throw a tantrum, but nothing. It bugged me more than I wanted to admit. Was he banking on Dad fixing this, or was he cooking up something worse? I kept replaying his admission I knew, and the way he'd shrugged, like my loss was pocket change. Grandma's house with its scuffed floors and her old tea kettle meant nothing to him, but it was everything to me. Caleb kept me grounded. Over coffee, he laid out the game plan. Your dad's lawyer is stalling, but they've got nothing. The forged signature, the notary's rap sheet, the bank statements, it's a slam dunk. He slid a folder across the table. Check this. It was a paper trail, $150,000 from the sale wired to a travel agency for Liam's Maldives trip. Another $40,000 as a down payment on a car Dad was eyeing for him. My jaw clenched. They didn't even try to hide it. Caleb smirked. Arrogance makes people sloppy. We've got them. I nodded, but a knot tightened in my gut. This wasn't just about winning anymore, it was about making them feel what I'd felt standing on that porch with strangers in my home. The trial date loomed, and I started noticing things. A car I didn't recognize parked near my apartment twice in 1 week. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years texted Heard about the lawsuit. You okay? Mom's smear campaign was kicking in. She'd always been good at playing victim. I ignored the cousin, but the car spooked me. Was Dad watching me, Liam? Or was I just paranoid? I mentioned it to Caleb, who didn't blink. They're scared, Ethan. Keep your eyes open, but don't let it rattle you. Easier said than done. When the trial hit, I was ready, or thought I was. The courtroom smelled like polish and stale coffee, and Dad sat at the defendant's table, his suit hanging loose like he'd shrunk. He didn't look at me, not once. I took the stand first, voice steady, as I told the jury about Grandma Ellen. How she'd raised me when Mom and Dad were too busy worshiping Liam. How her house was her legacy to me, a promise she'd made when I was 12, sitting on her couch with a plate of her oatmeal cookies. She wanted me to have it, I said, throat tight. And they took it. Caleb followed with the evidence, Grandma's will naming me heir, the forged signature glaringly fake, the notary's sketchy history, bank records tying the sale to Liam's vacation, and that damn car. It was airtight. Dad's lawyer tried to spin it. He painted me as a greedy son blowing a family misunderstanding out of proportion. My client only wanted to support his struggling younger son, he droned, gesturing at Dad, who nodded solemnly. I wanted to scream. Struggling Liam, who hadn't worked a day in his life. The jury didn't bite. Their faces stayed stone cold, and when Caleb cross-examined, he tore the lawyer apart, pointing out every lie, every gap. Dad's eyes darted to the exit like he wanted to bolt. The verdict came fast guilty on all counts. Fraud, forgery, theft. The courtroom went quiet except for Mom's choked sob from the back. Liam sat beside her, pale, staring at the floor. Dad's head dropped, and for the first time he looked small, like a man who'd gambled and lost everything. The judge set sentencing for a few weeks later, but I already knew Dad was done. As I left the stand, Liam's eyes met mine just for a second. No anger, no guilt, just nothing. It stung more than I expected. Outside, Mom caught me by the arm, her face twisted. "How could you do this?" she hissed. "He's your father." I pulled free. "He stole from me, forged my name." "That's a crime, Mom." Her eyes narrowed. "You're not my son anymore." The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. Deep down, I'd always known she'd choose Liam. I walked away, her voice fading. Liam lingered nearby, hands in his pockets. "Happy now," he muttered. I turned, voice low. "You got a free vacation with stolen money. Why don't you tell me?" He didn't answer, just walked off. I watched him go, a strange calm settling over me. This wasn't over, not yet. Then Caleb called with news that turned my world upside down. Caleb's call came as I was driving home from the courthouse. Mom's words, "You're not my son anymore," still stinging like a fresh cut. "Ethan, you need to hear this," he said, voice tight. "The judge just approved our motion to seize your dad's assets, house savings, everything. And we've got a clear shot to buy back Grandma's house with the settlement." I gripped the wheel, a rush of relief mixing with something darker. It wasn't just victory, it was justice. Dad and Liam thought they could erase my past, but I was taking it back. Still, as I hung up, a hollow ache settled in. Winning didn't undo the betrayal. It didn't bring Grandma Ellen back. The sentencing was 3 weeks later, and I almost didn't go. Why bother? Dad was guilty, the evidence undeniable. But Caleb insisted, "You need to see this through." So I sat in the courtroom watching Dad shuffle in his too big suit, now a symbol of how far he'd fallen. The judge didn't mince words, 5 years for fraud and forgery plus full restitution. Mom let out a sob that echoed in the quiet room. Liam sat beside her, face blank, like he was watching a movie he didn't care about. Dad turned in his seat, his eyes locking on mine. Pure hatred burned there, but I held his gaze. He'd built this prison himself. Outside, the fallout hit fast. Mom and Liam couldn't afford their mortgage without Dad's income, and with his assets frozen, they were out of options. They moved in with Aunt Karen, Mom's sister, who took them in but didn't sugarcoat her disgust. I got the story from a cousin. Karen told Mom, flat out, "I'm helping because you're family, but what you did to Ethan was vile. Grandma would be ashamed." Mom snapped back, "You're taking his side." Karen didn't budge. "I'm taking Ellen's." That shut Mom up, but it didn't stop her from bad-mouthing me. She called every relative, spinning a tale of me as the heartless son who'd jailed his own father and left his family homeless. Liam, meanwhile, played the victim online, posting vague ex-rants about disloyalty without naming me. I ignored it. The truth was on my side. Extended family started reaching out, piecing things together. My cousin Tara called hesitant. "Ethan, did you really put your dad in prison? I didn't sugarcoat it." He forged my signature, stole my house, and spent the money on Liam's vacation. What was I supposed to do? A long pause then. Yeah, I wouldn't have let that go either. Others followed, uncles, aunts, even a great aunt who'd adored Grandma. They weren't just shocked, they were furious. Grandma's house wasn't just mine, it was her legacy, a middle finger to my parents' neglect. Dad's betrayal didn't just screw me, it spat on her memory. That flipped the script. Mom's sob story fell apart and her allies dwindled. I used the settlement to buy back Grandma's house. The day I got the keys, I walked inside, the familiar creak of the floorboards hitting me like a hug. I ran my fingers over the scratched coffee table memories flooding back me as a kid, crashing toy cars while Grandma laughed. The lavender scent was gone, replaced by the new owner's sterile cleaner, but it was still home. I moved in that week, sleeping in the guest room where I'd spent countless nights as a kid. Each box I unpacked felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. But every night, I'd lie awake wondering why Mom and Liam's hatred felt heavier than Dad's sentence. Liam was another story. With no house, no car, and no more handouts, reality hit him hard. At 25, he had to face the world as a jobless nobody with a rap sheet of laziness. I heard through Tara that he'd applied for a few gigs gas station retail, but didn't last a week. He wasn't used to work, and it showed. Mom wasn't much better. She and Liam scraped by in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, a far cry from their old suburban palace. Tara said Mom kept up the martyr act, but even she was tiring of it. They're their own worst enemies, she told me. I didn't disagree. I thought that was the end of it. I had the house, Dad was locked up, and Mom and Liam were out of my life. But then Aunt Karen called, her voice shaky. "Ethan, your mom's been talking to a lawyer. She's claiming you coerced her into staying silent about the sale." My blood ran cold. Coerced, I hadn't even spoken to her before the lawsuit. It was a lie, but a dangerous one. Mom wasn't just fighting to save face, she was coming for me. And I had a sinking feeling Liam was helping her build the trap. Mom's lawyer stunt was a low blow, but I wasn't surprised. She'd always rewrite history to make herself the victim. Accusing me of coercing her into silence about the house sale, pure fiction. I hadn't even talked to her before Caleb filed the lawsuit. But the threat was real and it lit a fire under me. Dad was in prison, Liam was floundering, and now Mom was trying to claw her way back by dragging me down. I wasn't just fighting for Grandma Ellen's house anymore, I was fighting for my life. And I wasn't about to lose. I called Caleb the second I hung up with Aunt Karen. "Mom's got a lawyer," I said, pacing my living room, the familiar creak of Grandma's floorboards grounding me. Claims I bullied her into staying quiet about the sale. Caleb snorted. "She's got no evidence, Ethan. It's a Hail Mary. Send me everything, texts, emails, even that cryptic message she sent. We'll bury this." I dug through my phone, forwarding the tearing this family apart text and every scrap of communication. Caleb was right, Mom's story was flimsy, but it still gnawed at me. She wasn't just lying. She was trying to rewrite who I was. And Liam, I'd bet my house, he was egging her on, whispering in her ear like the loyal sidekick he'd always been. The next week, Caleb shut down Mom's claim before it could gain traction. Her lawyer sent a cease and desist letter, but Caleb countered with a motion to dismiss, citing zero proof and a mountain of evidence against Dad's fraud. "They're bluffing," he told me over coffee. "Your mom's desperate and Liam's too spineless to stop her." I nodded, but the weight of it all, Dad's sentence, Mom's betrayal. Liam's complicity felt heavier than ever. I'd won the house, the lawsuit, everything, but it didn't feel like enough. Not yet. Then came the call I didn't expect. Mom, of all people, her voice thin and tired. "Ethan, your father wants to see you." I froze the phone heavy in my hand. Dad had been in prison for months, and I'd made peace with never speaking to him again. Why now, I asked. She sighed. He's been asking for weeks. I don't know, maybe he's sick. Just go. I almost said no, but something stopped me. Not love, not duty, just a need to hear what he'd say to close the door for good. Visiting Dad was surreal. The prison smelled like bleach and despair, and he looked broken. Grayer, thinner, like the arrogance had been wrung out of him. He sat across from me, hands folded, and didn't waste time. I messed up, Ethan, he said, voice low. I was selfish. I let my love for Liam blind me. I shouldn't have taken the house. It wasn't the half-assed sorry you're upset I'd expected. It was real. He admitted the forgery, the favoritism, all of it. I thought I was doing right by him, he said, eyes distant. But I was a fool. I sat there letting him talk, memories flickering, him cheering at Liam's soccer games, ignoring my straight A report cards. When he finally asked, "Can you forgive me?" I didn't answer right away. Not for him, but for me. Holding that anger was like carrying a boulder. I forgive you, I said finally. But we're not going back. This is done. He nodded like he'd known it was coming. I left the door clanging shut behind me and felt lighter. Not fixed, just free. Mom and Liam didn't change. Mom stopped her legal nonsense after Caleb's counter, but she never spoke to me again. Her silence was louder than her accusations. Liam acted like I'd vanished. No calls, no texts, just more vague ex posts about trust that I didn't bother reading. Tara told me he'd picked up a part-time job at a warehouse, but he was still leaning on Mom, still dodging accountability. They were stuck in that dingy apartment, their old life a memory. I didn't wish them pain, but I didn't lose sleep over it either. They'd made their choices. I settled into Grandma's house for good. The first night, I lit a fire in the old fireplace. The crackle took me back to winters with her telling stories under a quilt. I kept her tea kettle on the stove, a quiet nod to her presence. The extended family rallied around me. Cousins dropped by. Aunt Karen sent a pie. Even Great Aunt Marge mailed a card saying Ellen would be proud. They didn't just support me. They honored Grandma's memory, which meant more than any lawsuit. Mom and Liam's lies couldn't touch that. It's been a year since the trial, and I'm still here in the house that was always meant to be mine. Dad's serving his time. Mom and Liam are ghosts, and I'm moving forward. But sometimes late at night, I wonder if I went too far. I got justice, but I lost what little family I had. Was it worth it? I think of Grandma's smile, her voice saying, "You're enough, Ethan," and I know she'd have my back. Still, I'm left with one question, and I need to know AITA story 2. I believed I was entering a toast for a promotion. I heard, instead, unexpected greetings from graduate school. Layla, my sister, my $2,000 in savings was her celebration. My mother leaned closer. Someone who truly persevered was someone we wanted to honor. I grinned. I get it. I canceled my phone plan, closed my tuition account, and unlinked my credit from all of my loans that evening. Her registration was disabled by morning. Afterwards, later that week. They still won't discuss what arrived in the mail, though. It wasn't only bad what they did. It was calm, purposeful, brutal, and premeditated. The type of treachery that doesn't immediately jump out at you. It grins as it stabs you. For more than 3 years, I had been toiling away at a job that offered little more than a cubicle and quiet. Through it, no one held my hand. I had no coach. Caffeine-stained clothing and partially broken fingernails helped me battle my way to the top. I didn't ask for fireworks when I eventually received a promotion and a respectable rise. I only mentioned that I wanted to have a little family celebration, just something easy. I assumed we would place an order for meals and perhaps have some beverages in the backyard. Nothing ostentatious. Mom gave a nod as if that made sense. We'll take care of everything, she even said. They wanted to make it great, but they were short on funds, she told me over the phone a week later. Without a hesitation, I sent more than $2,000. It was foolish. Now I am aware of that. I thought I would see a congrats sign as I went into their driveway that evening, or at the very least someone saying, "Hey, nice job, Kurt." Instead, I saw a fucking catering truck going away and gold streamers hanging from the porch. As soon as I entered, the lights turned on before I had a chance to put down the cake. Unexpected. Layla, welcome to graduate school. At first, it didn't register. To be honest, I felt the flag was messed up. After that, I noticed Layla strolling behind me, already crying and giving our parents and aunts people she seldom ever speaks to hugs. Everyone gave a clap. The champagne was popped. My uncle's phone began to record. They had a playlist. They had a wall of printed pictures of her academic career. Nobody gave me a look. Nobody inquired about the status of the job, brought up my name. I held a cake with the words, "Congrats, Kay," in the living room. My mother even delivered a little speech as everyone toasted her. She mentioned resiliency, diligence, and family support. "We wanted to honor someone who truly persevered," she remarked, glancing directly at me. I remained silent, simply grinned. However, something changed within me. After returning to my residence, I didn't become angry. I refrained from crying. I logged into each account while I was seated at my desk. Since Layla stated that she was afraid of debt and didn't want to take out another loan, they were connected to the tuition fund I had established for her. I set the balance back to zero. I was still paying for the family phone plan. Every co-signed loan autopay, every little thread that linked my money to theirs was cut off. When the university wrote her to inform her that her registration had been denied because of financial problems, I had already cut it short. I had already gotten ahead by 6 paces. They believed that I would be too obedient to resist and that they could use me as a nameless donor. They were mistaken, but I didn't stop there since I sent them something unexpected in the mail as my next move. Something that when my dad opened it would make his face fall. And it was only the beginning. They made no attempt to conceal their actions. The thing that burned the most was that I saw that the photos were all over social media a few days after the party. My mother was so pleased of our future scholar that she labeled one of the posts, "We had faith in her." Don't bring me up. There was no indication that I had provided the funding for that small party. It was similar to witnessing someone pilfer your credit card, throw a party in your honor, and then tag you in the pictures as though you should be appreciative. I had 2 envelopes in front of me and a pen in my hand as I sat at my desk that evening. One for the finance office of the institution, alerting them to the fact that Layla Martinez's anticipated tuition transfer was no longer permitted. My father was the recipient of the other personal certification. Last year, he gave me his old Toyota Camry. With the lease still in his name and the remaining amount paid by a payment I pledged to make, he stated it was a present. The automobile was never the point. He was trying to appear charitable while clutching a string. I then snipped the thread. It was a short letter. It only said that the automobile will be returned by Friday and that I would not be making the last lease payment. I merely signed my name, not with love or rage. It was the sort of letter you write when you're prepared to tell someone that they don't have the right to be patient any longer. I waited after giving it to the courier. There was an immediate stillness. It was 3 days later. No calls, no texts, not even an emoji for sarcasm. Radio silence. However, I sensed it. Like static before a storm, it's the type of tension that erupts within a family. With the exception of Layla sharing a link to some new dorm furnishings, the group chat remained silent while I continued monitoring it for comments. Then she texted me. Only one word. Why? After about 5 minutes of staring at it, I laid my phone face down on the kitchen table and turned to go. I attended my cousin Natalie's Memorial Day cookout the next day. I needed to meet at least one family member who hadn't made a decision yet, and she had invited me weeks beforehand before everything went south. But I sensed something wasn't right even before I entered the gate. When they spotted me, they turned. A turn that doesn't proclaim, "Oh, hey, you made it." However, the kind that indicates your name has appeared in discussions in which you were not present. Janice, my aunt, hardly gave me a look. Uncle Rob gave me an odd greeting. No Layla, no parents, just the shadow of their absence lingering in the air. I was pushed away from the cooler by Natalie. She didn't inquire about my well-being. She went right for it. They claim that you lost it. You lost it because the celebration wasn't about you, she remarked, that you disconnected them for no reason. I didn't respond. I simply gazed at her. You are aware of this family's nature, she went on. They make things better quickly. I gave a nod. Yes, I am aware of it. I could have told her all about the $2,000, how my moment had been erased, and how they had treated me like an ATM and demanded payment. However, I didn't. For some strange reason, I wanted them to continue lying. Since they had no idea what else I had done or what I was going to do next, I wanted them to go deeper and feel secure in their version of events. And they would no longer be able to play the victim when it truly hit them. Shouting was hardly the first indicator of panic. That was not all there was to it. The smug little updates on Lila's dorm shopping abruptly stopped, and the family group chat changed. Then there was an uncaptioned picture of her sitting in the backyard. Not even a grin. I was aware of what was taking place. Her last day of registration was scheduled for Thursday morning. Weeks ago, I put it on my calendar, when I was still concerned. Her account was frozen, and the first warning email was delivered by the institution due to the unpaid tuition. I was responsible for making the payment, the one they thought I handled in silence, as usual. After making my coffee, I waited while watching the sunrise from my balcony. I was expecting a call, a text, or maybe an email, but I never received it. Rather, I delivered the camera to my dad's workplace building on Friday afternoon. In the rear lot, I parked it. I locked it. A yellow sticky note with the words, "For Martin Martinez," was left with the keys at the registration desk. Just closure, no argument, no explanation. For them, however, it was not closure. I got a call from Natalie that evening. As if she were leaving a crowded room, I could hear voices behind her. You ought to be aware. That's where she started going totally crazy. I remained silent. You've been acting strangely since the promotion, and your mother informed everyone that you're having a breakdown. Naturally, saying, I crack, was simpler than acknowledging that they would destroy something significant. They weren't only changing the narrative, they were thoroughly washing their guilt away. They said that you abandoned them without cause. But you never even raised your voice, Kurt, she continued. That stayed with her. To be honest, because I had every excuse to yell and to confront them in front of the whole family. However, I didn't. Until Sunday, I remained silent and walked about like a resentful ghost. My letter was written that morning, written by hand, just the facts without any drama or threats. I thought we were celebrating something for everyone when you stole $2,000 from me. You destroyed the purpose of the meeting. You then brought up Layla. In my own tale, you rendered me invisible. I did not sign it lovingly. I did not even include my entire name. I used my own hands to fold it, place it in an envelope, and drop it in their mailbox. After then, there was a heavier hush. Days went by. The group chat remained inactive. Natalie even ceased texting. Then the call came 2 weeks later. My parents did not give it to me, not even from Layla. My dad's oldest brother, Rob, was there. The sort of guy who only gets involved in drama when something is on fire. He answered, they're in trouble. Layla, deadlines for school are approaching. She has nowhere to live. They are unwilling to visit you. However, they are unsure of whom else to ask. He was asked one question by me. Did they explain what transpired to you? A lengthy silence. They sent me their version, which covered all the information I need. They had previously contacted 2 additional family members, he added. That sort of money was not something anyone wanted to front. And after learning about the situation, they refused to work on loans, including Layla's name. This might be resolved in a single move. Rob claimed to be correct. Not for free, but I could. And not before the truth is spoken out. I'll give it some thought. I meant it when I told him. I needed them to understand that they no longer had power, not that I needed it. I knew what I was going to do by the time I stated I would give it some thought. Instead of having them whisper it to family members or use a proxy, I was going to force them to speak it out. I had to hear them acknowledge it. So I waited. It took another 3 days for anything to happen. Layla then sent an SMS. Not too high. No, can we have a conversation? Just, are you able to assist? I deleted the message after a full minute of staring at the screen. No answer. It wasn't a request. She used to ask for a little amount of petrol money back while she had my card on file, and that demand was cloaked in entitlement and tinged with ego. My mother then phoned. That caught me off guard. I didn't respond. Her voicemail was left. Kurt, we will not plead. However, you are aware of the implications for your sister. She has put forth a lot of effort. Why you're doing this is beyond me. We've always been there for one another. Just to hear how she dismissed the party, the money, and the fact that they removed me from the image as if it didn't exist, I played it again once. And we've always been there for one another. As if I hadn't been providing for this family's financial needs for the last 3 years. But I didn't respond. Then an odd thing occurred. Lucia sent a message. Every night, she sheds tears. Your mother is a complete wreck. Your father refuses to discuss it. Shall we all take a seat? Simply speak. The next day, we had coffee together. Neutral territory. She was anxious and obviously trying to avoid taking sides, but I could see she was tired of the drama. She stated, I think they simply didn't realize how deeply they cut you. They assumed you would move on. I gave a nod. They always do. She extracted an envelope that was sealed from her handbag. They wanted me to provide it to you since they didn't want to send it to you directly. Later that night, I opened it. There was a message from Layla handwritten. I hadn't seen her handwriting since high school until now. I didn't request payment from you. I had no idea that you were the cause of the celebration. I was informed that it was a present from my parents. I would have put an end to it if I had known. That portion felt genuine, I promise. Then it became hazy. I understand your anger, but I need assistance. I'll repay you if you can perform this one thing for me. I'll put things right. Nevertheless, neither she nor my parents apologized. I thus gave the university a call. Barely enough money to get her registration unlocked. Housing, no additional costs. Just the absolute minimum, not a dime. Sufficient to restore her to the list, not much more. I then gave Rob and Lucia a call. I assisted her. That's finished. However, they speak with me personally if they need anything additional. And they'll begin by saying, we were wrong the next time. Not a favor, no deal. Only those 3 words. They decided to share it. I was not holding my breath, though. After a few days, something occurred. I never thought I would receive an invitation in the mail. It said, a card thick stock gold trim. Supper with the family, 6 p.m. on Sunday. This time there are no surprises. We swear. There was a note inside. This time we want to do it correctly. If you can come, Mom love. No RSVP is required. Despite my uncertainty, I folded the card and tucked it into my jacket pocket. They were finally following my rules, not because I had forgiven them. For 3 days, I kept the invitation in the pocket of my jacket. As if it might change, I kept checking. The tone remained the same, though perhaps I misinterpreted it. Gold-trimmed, spotless formal, dressed up in linen napkins as if they were throwing a wedding or an apology. I kept my trip a secret from everyone. Not Lucia, not Natalie, not even my roommate. I simply parked a few houses down and drove over that Sunday at about 5:45. There were people in the driveway. Layla's borrowed Prius, my mom's SUV, my dad's truck, and a few other vehicles that I didn't recognize for a moment. I nearly made a U-turn when my mother leaned in and added, they wanted to celebrate someone who really pushed through. I recalled the expression on her face. She used to smile like that when she gave us the little Christmas presents and said that it was because I had rung the doorbell rather than coming in. My father replied. He appeared older. The man who normally seemed 10 feet tall briefly seemed ordinary. I'm not sure if it was due to the lighting or simply my perception of him. He remained silent, simply nodded and moved out of the way. The dining room was arranged like an overstuffed Thanksgiving table. Candles, real cutlery, not using paper plates. At the far end, Layla was already seated. Her eyes flitted up as if she hadn't anticipated my presence. As if she had been drafting a peace pact, my mother emerged from the kitchen and wiped her hands on a towel. There was silence for a while. My mother then grinned. Just exhausted, not arrogant or conceited. "I'm happy you arrived." I gave a nod. "Come on, let's eat." We performed the rituals. Salad with chicken and parmesan. Warm bread, similar to a typical supper. However, it wasn't. Nobody knew where to begin. Every subject was sidestepped. Layla mentioned a professor she found appealing. My father said the gutters needed to be fixed. As she poured wine, my mother continued asking whether anybody else needed some. My mother then cleared her throat. "We should apologize to you, Kurt," she added. Because of what transpired, the room became silent. "Everything after the celebration. We ought to have explained it to you. You're worthy of better." I remained silent, simply gazed at her. That was a long enough gap. Layla continued, "I didn't know. Actually, I didn't. However, I need to have questioned more." I waited. At last, my dad turned to face me and stated, "We made a mistake." Those were the precise phrases I requested. It busted something open like a pressure valve hissing loose, but it didn't cure everything. I sensed it in the atmosphere. Perhaps relief, or simply weariness from all the acting. "A little box across the table," my mother remarked. I took a while to open it. I watched her expression while I waited. She appeared anxious rather than arrogant. Nobody was grinning. I took it open. There was a watch inside. Nor ostentatious nor gaudy. Simply clean. Classic has 3 phrases inscribed on the back. "This is something you earned." The money wasn't the issue. The watch wasn't the cause. They handed me something that didn't feel like a leash for the first time. I had no intention of destroying everything. "I just wanted you to experience it," I said. My father gave a slow nod. "Now we do." Nobody attempted to offer an explanation. Nobody let forth a cry. It was not the conclusion of a film. It was still uncooked. It's still weird. After supper, however, something had changed. My mother gave me a hug as I put on my jacket. I didn't immediately return the hug, simply stood there. I then allowed it to occur. "Will you be here next weekend?" she inquired. "It depends." I said, "What's the event?" She grinned. "Nothing, only dinner." And I did trust her for once. I returned for supper a week later. This time, no invitations, no lengthy remarks, only my parents. Layla and a pan of lasagna that appeared to have been there since the morning. The home seemed more like what it should have been all along and less like a trap. Keep quiet. Lived with fatigue. Layla was using her phone to browse while seated at the counter. When I entered, she gave me a nod. No artificial energy, no forced grin. Just a straightforward, honest appearance. But now I understand. We played some laps and ate in the living room. Ceramic is scraped by forks. Nobody put on any clothes. Not even my dad took off his work boots. We discussed dull topics, new tires and gas pricing. According to Layla, she was given a summer internship by one of her instructors. Even if it didn't pay, I advised her to accept it. My mother once requested me to assist her navigate the online banking app while she leaned over. I directed her to click. Not much more. No snark, no lecturing. My dad then inquired. "On your end, you're okay?" "Yes," I replied. He gave a nod, as if that was sufficient. Unbeknownst to them, those few words had greater significance than the meal, the watch, or any of the letters. They had no intention of obtaining anything from me. All they were doing was checking in years for the first time. They didn't think I had anything until they saw me. Later, while we were doing the dishes, Layla drew me away. "I will reimburse the tuition," she declared. "Not everything at once. However, I will." I refrained from arguing. I simply nodded. Sincerely, I didn't require the reimbursement. Was this the time I needed when nothing was twisted into manipulation or guilt? I wasn't the family's backup plan for a while, where they eventually realized how much what they had stolen from me had cost. The trust is just as important as the money. I didn't say goodbye as I departed that evening. I simply waved and went outside to enjoy the refreshing breeze. I didn't feel victorious. I felt no vindication. I was satisfied. Not in a more favorable way. It wasn't like I was going to be gone forever. I just finished lugging my own version. They persisted in pressing me. They were the only ones remaining for once. I hoped to return. One update. 3 weeks have passed since that peaceful meal. Since then, I hadn't returned to the house. Not that I was trying to avoid them. Life was at last getting back on track. Now that the promotion was formally in effect, work felt different, as though I was seated at the table. My phone rang more with requests from pals to hang out than with ones from relatives. Coworkers discussing plans for the weekend. Everything was as usual. Then I noticed a simple white envelope in my mailbox. No address for return, no handwriting. Kurt Martinez alone typed a label as if it had been printed from an office printer. At first, I wasn't sure how to interpret it. I even speculated that it may be related to the bank, a fresh PIN or a late declaration. On the counter in my kitchen, I opened it. There was a folded sheet of paper inside. At the top is a single line of written text. You should view Layla's actions and the screenshot that follows. It was a post from a local graduate student's private Facebook group. Weeks before our big meal, maybe Layla had tweeted a lengthy tirade about how her nasty brother had ruined her schooling because he couldn't stand not being the focus of attention. Everything in it was clear, but she didn't name me. Even if you did my job, the party and the money are all about individuals who act giving in order to manipulate others. The worst thing. Her affection emoticons were endorsed by dozens more responses. Messages of support. Nobody questioned it. I took a seat. Go over it once more. It wasn't an old one. It wasn't from when the war was at its worst. This came after. Following the letter, the payment to the university, the dinner, the engraved watch, and so on. We made a mistake. She continued to lie. What about the envelope? No name, not a word. Only enough to let me know. It had been sent anonymously. The truth was something someone wanted me to know. Update 2. Before turning off my laptop, I read that topic 6 times. A part of me wanted to take a screenshot of the entire thing and email it to my dad and mother, to remind them of whom they were protecting, perhaps even Rob and Lucia. There was another part of me that wanted to question Layla directly how she could be seated across from me at supper. Express regret. After saying thank you, she turned around and told her students a scenario in which I was the bad guy. However, none of that took place. Rather, I sat for more than an hour in quiet. I then took a stroll outside. Halfway into the park, I forgot my phone. I came to the realization that the post was not the true source of my ire. It wasn't even that she was believed by others. I think the reason things were different was because I let my guard down and sincerely wanted to apologize. I told myself that they were all ready. Perhaps that was the most painful thing they did that evening. The screenshots were not sent by me. I didn't mention it in the group conversation or forward the envelope. Though I tightened my credit alerts, changed the locks on my joint accounts once again, and looked into any residual issues between us, I let them preserve their little fantasy. Only a handful of digital traces remained. Logins from years ago were exchanged by a couple. A few days later, I deleted them. As if we were still in the stage of acting as though nothing was wrong, Layla sent me a meme that was stupid and irrelevant. I didn't answer. Because this is the problem. I wasn't going to discipline them this time. I had no intention of helping them comprehend. I had finished playing referee in a game that I had not requested to play. No more second chances. Quiet warnings are over. Let them tell their story. I've finished composing it for them. Maybe months later if you would like a follow-up? Perhaps simply say the word when anything changes once again. Or I might begin a new narrative. Story 3. I attended the renewal of my parents' vows. Everybody's name except mine was on the place cards. My cousin gave a snort. Sitting is now reserved for family members exclusively. According to my mother, you may have earned a position if you had contributed more. I went away after taking a picture and reversing the catering payment. $500 to $700. After that, I called off the surprise honeymoon I had planned for this couple. By dawn, they had no flight and were sitting on the sidewalk with their bags. I knew as soon as I saw the cards that they were all spread out on the white tray table at the venue's lakefront entrance. Under the afternoon sun, each little tinted card with gold calligraphy is properly positioned. They must have numbered at least 60. The names of all the relatives with whom I had ever had a stale holiday meal. Brett, my cousin, even attempted to sell my PlayStation on Facebook after being expelled from high school. He was seated, 2 front row, excellent one. I took one look around the table, then slowly, then again. Nothing. No Kevin, not a placeholder. No mistake at all. Someone laughed softly behind me. Neha was standing there with her arms folded as I turned around. One eyebrow went up. As if reading a paragraph off a menu, she added, "I guess it's just for family now." I simply gazed at her. She didn't recoil. In fact, she appeared to be proud of it. My mother was rearranging artificial flowers along the aisle when I stepped right up to her. Runner. When I asked her about the cards, she didn't even raise her head. Had you put in more effort, you could have been able to get a spot. Made a greater effort. I blew this interview like it was the final year of my life or some sort of job interview. I didn't put in enough effort, which is why I watched my marriage fall apart, lost custody of my children, and had to work 70-hour weeks just to keep afloat. For this occasion, no one asked me to do anything. They were not obliged to. I did it because I believed that I may still have some significance. I gave the catering business $500 to $700. I set up the sound system, the cake, and even the officiant. I wanted it to feel like magic for them so they were unaware. What about the honeymoon Italy for 2 weeks? Flights in first class. Wine tastings. A Tuscan villa. Everything was taken care of, even the intertown transportation. Everything is paid for in advance. The confirmation was waiting for me in my email. I intended to present it to them following the wedding. For once, make them feel like kings and queens. Nevertheless, I was not even worthy of a name card. I remained silent after that. I took out my phone, took a brief picture of the setup, and turned to go. No farewell, not a scene. I walked out of the arena, drove directly to the motel, and spent the entire 20 minutes sitting still on the side of the bed. After that, I started working. I first phoned the catering business and instructed them to deliver the food, but to give me a refund. I didn't want to spoil the celebration, but they told I could cancel completely. All I wanted was to avoid paying for it. The honeymoon follows. Every single reservation was canceled by me. Air travel, lodgings, excursions, not refundable. No issue. I used a card that provided travel insurance to make the purchase. Took half an hour. When I finished, I got about $13,000 returned to my account. After packing and checking out the next morning, I made the decision to take one more drive around the neighborhood for the sake of seeing. They were standing just in front of their home on the sidewalk. Like a department shop display, the luggage was piled high. My mother was wearing a large floppy hat, the type you wear solely when you want others to think you're a carefree person. In an apparent attempt to gain a signal to call the airline that did not have their reservation, my dad was pacing while holding his phone in the air. I continued. I failed to wave, and things started to change on that day. They believed me to be too frail, too broken to defend themselves. They assumed that since I had no one else, I would continue to provide. However, they overlooked something. There's nothing to lose for a man who has nothing left. Before my plane even touched down, the texts began. When my phone buzzed loudly enough to move an inch across the tray table, I quickly switched off airplane mode. Mia gave the first one. "You departed early, according to Mom. All okay, Brett. Hello? What took place during the wedding? My Aunt Carol then gave me a lengthy, agonizingly sincere speech on how stressed up everyone is these days. Furthermore, your mother's statement was meaningless. No one inquired about my well-being. No one inquired about the experience of being erased. What transpired wasn't the issue. It had to do with damage control and optics. Back home, I didn't respond to any of them. I lost myself in my work. This type of work causes you to lose track of time. I had finished serving as the family ATM and backup plan. I began taking on the firm's worst projects, customers that nobody else desired. Deadlines under pressure and potential demands were irrelevant. I required it. It was another silent screw you each time I reached a new goal a client sent in a referral or a bonus hit my account. To those who believed that I would always remain small, I had saved up enough money by October to open an account for my children and pay my divorce lawyer. An actual one. Private. Untouchable. About it, I didn't boast. Retaliation doesn't work that way, does it? They didn't like the stillness, though. Things changed around Thanksgiving. I was duped by the writing once more, this time by its emotive tone. Grandma isn't feeling well. Come on over. A lot would be at stake. However, I was aware that Grandma was doing well. My cousin Jake had contacted me 2 days previously. Said she was keen as ever. Still defeating folks at cards at her assisted living residence. Maya was simply hoping guilt would work. What pride didn't. Then my dad dropped the guilt bombs. At last, he gave a call. I was interested, but I nearly didn't respond. He wasted no time. Kev, we're in a bit of a jam. I wanted to know whether you were flexible. Adaptability. Like he was asking for a gym spotter, the man begged me for money. He informed me that they had been more devastated than anticipated by the vow renewal. Because they are humiliated in front of many influential people by the cancellation of their honeymoon. To pay for some of the remaining expenses, he had apparently taken out a short-term loan. The level of interest had skyrocketed. They were now considering refinancing possibilities they didn't fully comprehend because the second mortgage was past due. I paid attention. I said very little. I asked him what he wanted when he hesitated. Help. A little assistance. It took me a few seconds to say it. I'll lend a hand, but not financially. He remained silent. I clarified that I could assist them with budgeting, maybe liaising with the bank, and potentially renting out the guest home on their land. I'm capable of doing all that. I wasn't writing another check, though. A pause was followed by the sound of the phone changing. My mother took over. Kevin, it doesn't really help us. No, thank you. No, thank you. I simply spoke at a level tone. I hope you work things out after that. She didn't answer. He didn't either. Days passed in that quiet. Weeks. The public shift followed. In a lengthy post on Facebook, my father, who is never one for subtlety, discussed how not all family members stay with you and how sometimes the people you reared simply vanish when you need them most. It received a lot of sympathy remarks. I didn't respond. I realized then that they still hoped I would give in, that this was just another one of my pranks, and that I would ultimately crawl back to make things right once again. But I had had enough of being a fool. They believed I was too frail to defend myself. They assumed there would be irreversible harm when they observed a guy who had been abandoned by his wife, deprived of his children, and wallowing in sorrow. They failed to understand that the bottom isn't the end. It serves as the cornerstone. There was still more for them to lose. I had time left. The reports became increasingly bizarre by the middle of January. Suddenly, I received a message from one of my younger cousins asking whether I had indeed taken out a loan in my dad's name and then canceled the honeymoon to avoid repaying it. For a whole minute, I gazed at the message, wondering whether it was a prank. No, it wasn't. She had heard it from her mother, who had heard it from my mother, and it had now taken on a warped form in which I had ruined the vacation because I was upset that they were even renewing their vows. I didn't answer. She was just put on the same list that the rest of the family had chosen. Money was no longer their only goal. They desired a villain. and I was chosen. They were unaware that I had already begun removing the layers from them, each and every one, silently, carefully. One of my high school pals now worked in real estate. I requested that she perform a gentle check on my parents' property to see if anything unusual was discovered. The following day, she responded to me. It turns out that they had taken out equity to fund a home office renovations, a new car, and this boat, and they had refinanced not once but twice in the last 2 years. A boat. For a yacht, they took out tens of thousands of dollars that they didn't have. They had no idea how to tow at all. The vow renewal has nothing to do with the second mortgage. That was the most recent justification. Long before I canceled a single reservation, they were drowning. I waited a few weeks. After that, I called the bank. I provided them with an anonymous tip. I wanted to let you know that the Johnsons at 17 Westfield could have lied about their income on their refinancing application. I didn't even need to provide specifics. The seed was just sown. I learned that they were the subject of a formal review a few days later. The icing on the cake arrived next. Do you recall that guest house I suggested that they rent out? They rejected me, claimed that it wasn't their fashion. I rented it on my own. From the city, not from them. It turns out that my grandpa was the legal owner of the zoning. No one cared to contest the strange, small package he placed in the well which the guest house was situated on. I settled many $1,000s in overdue taxes. After completing the necessary papers, I was the owner of the building they believed to be theirs in less than a month. The finest aspect, I never used it at all. I left it unfilled. The lights are off. The blinds are drawn. I would sometimes stop by just to water the shrubs and inspect the locks. Probably wondering why someone would rent a house and not even live in it, my parents kept a close eye on things. They went crazy about it. One March morning was the last straw. My dad sent me an SMS. Kevin, we're having a terrible time. The house is at stake. We require assistance. Please. He used the word please for the first time, so I phoned and stated I was willing to chat, but not about money. They claimed that a lecture was unnecessary. Then good luck, I answered. The tone shifted at that point. For once, my father phoned me and embraced me. I will never forget the 7 words said by the family's future. All right, well, anything. You idiot will get by without you. That was the end of it. No, just one solution. No emotional breakthrough. Nothing but quiet. And a mounting mountain of issues that were no longer mine. So be it after my father's final words. You idiot will get by without you. I didn't wait because I expected an apology. Someone may break a cousin aunt or even my mother in that evasive, hesitant manner she always used to make amends without actually accepting responsibility, just to see how long it would take. However, they didn't. The silence dragged on like a tire leak. It was nearly confusing at first. No abrupt asks for little amounts of assistance till payday, and no passive-aggressive texts. No voicemails with sighs interspersed with words. After the family emergency hotline, my phone went silent. The noise was followed by something worse. Nothing. I wasn't circling their needs for the first time in years. No demands, no phony love, no turning of guilt into obligation. I became aware of my addiction to the role they had assigned me. I didn't know who I was without it, not because I enjoyed it. So I began to work that out. I put in extra effort, but not only to get away. I took on tasks that I genuinely enjoyed. I resumed my running. Nothing major, only jogs in the morning. The type of air that still has a fresh scent. I enrolled in a cookery course. I became proficient in making risotto from scratch. Simple, stupid things. It was mine, though. I even began dating. Danielle is her name. She works as a paramedic. No history, no drama, no complicated family politics. She pays attention. She inquires, and when I tell her the truth about my parents, she doesn't bat an eye. A few months after we first met, I took her for a drive past my former neighborhood one evening. I kept my house a secret from her. I didn't have to. Before I could, she pointed it out. The one where the garden is withering. That's right. The yard was immaculate once. My mother had an obsession with it. The flower gardens were clogged with weeds and the grass had turned yellow. The American flag, which had been hung correctly over the porch, was now flying like a warning partially unhooked. From the street, it appeared to be a house that was given up. I discovered the boat was gone 2 days later. Fixed. The second automobile is no different. That one didn't even need my research. One of the only people who hadn't entirely cut me off was my cousin Jake, who contacted me. He wrote, "You didn't hear it from me. However, when they stole the Lexus, your dad lost it in the driveway." The police were contacted by neighbors. I took a screenshot of the message and stored it, but I didn't reply. Not with malice. To remind myself that you're not insane. This is true. This is what they did. Then a plain white envelope arrived in August. No address for return. On the front is only my name in that familiar calligraphy. There was only one page within. The handwriting of my mother, Kevin. "It has been difficult. We have erred. We would be appreciative if you would think about assisting us again. This family is dysfunctional, and perhaps you can assist in reassembling it. Mom love." Once more there it was. "No, we apologize. No, we were mistaken." Just the tacit belief that I would return with a vengeance if I still had a heart. I would quickly fix the leaks, polish the porch, and seem as though it was only a minor issue. As if they hadn't stood there and informed me that I was no longer even related. I looked at the letter for a while after folding it. I watched it vanish in ribbons after feeding it into the shredder. I had finally come to terms with the fact that I knew nothing about them. They created a universe in which my worth was contingent upon my utility. They wanted me to continue supporting them after tearing me down behind my back. However, the fact that the scaffolding collapsed does not give them the right to change the regulations. Let me live without it, and let them live with what they created. Upon shredding the letter, I remained motionless in the silence. My mother's handwriting vanished into the blades, and I just gazed at the machine. I thought I would feel something. Guilt, anger, and even a glimmer of melancholy. However, I felt nothing at all. Just finished. Not in a dramatic way. I'm severing all connections. It's more like the moment you finally recognize the door you've been attempting to open in a movie. You have unlocked your entire life. It simply doesn't lead to anything. There's just no use in trying, so you let go of the handle and go on. And I didn't question whether they contacted me again for the first time. An apology was not what I was hoping for. I didn't practice my response in case they phoned. I only recently began to live. I erased all of their voicemails. Every old picture in the folder for the vow renewal. I even organized the back of my closet where I had stored a few boxes of household items. Garbage from childhood. Old cards. When I was 7 years old, my mother would take drawings to the refrigerator. For 5 minutes or so, it seemed harsh. It felt clean after that. I had lost my anger. I was alert and attentive. The guest home was transformed by myself. Nor an office, nor a rental. No one else's name on the deed, just a peaceful place with a shut door. On the weekends, I would go there. While sipping coffee on the veranda, we would observe squirrels scuttling across the fence. Nobody else approached it. That was the main idea. Danielle and I continued to draw nearer. She first thought it odd that she had never met my parents. I informed her that she was fortunate. She questioned me about why I didn't utilize the guest house. I was honest with her. It served as a reminder of who I was when I ceased being what they had made me not of them. The legal ploy followed. According to an email from a lawyer, the guest home was supposed to remain with the primary household, but was inadvertently transferred to me because of an administrative error in my grandfather's inheritance. They want its return. In fact, my parents hired a lawyer to attempt to pry my hands away. I didn't get that at all. I only chuckled. Write only one sentence and send it to my lawyer. He handled this with speed. In addition to the fact that their claim was baseless, we also filed a quiet claim reinforcement and a cease and desist, which prevented any more activity on the property. It was mine now, legally speaking, in every way. Irreversible, everlasting. They had given me that stillness following the vow renewal. I gave it back. Freezing, lawful, final. Jake texted me a week later. No. Hello. No. Jess, how are you? You took the home they claimed. Dad told me you're dead. Mom had been in tears for days. I did not enter anything while I gazed at the screen. He's dead. It's okay. Long ago, the only version of myself that he cared about passed away. The one that made money remained silent and maintained harmony while they took and claimed it was love. Mom is in tears. She certainly is. Not because she's missing me, though. Control is something she misses. She misses having a son to help her with her own needs. Jake got no response from me. After that, I blocked his number. It was no longer even rage. Clarity was the key. A room remains black even after the lights are turned off and the door is closed. However, you are not required to continuously monitor it. You just quit re-entering. I was there, outside the residence, my face in the sun. The lights were out behind me and I was holding keys. When you leave somebody like that, time does this weird thing. It wraps and extends over itself. Days go by quickly, yet they seem like years when you reflect on them. That's how the distance between my parents and myself gradually and silently built. It didn't even seem like distance until one day. Absence was the feeling. Actual, total absence. As if they had never been there in the first place. They didn't say anything else to me, not right away. Jake, who insisted on being impartial as if he hadn't chosen a side when it counted, provided the sole updates. He texted again. They might lose the house in a month. I didn't answer. Then another. Your dad is attempting to launch a side company. Something about landscaping is inexperienced. Finally, if they are unable to obtain a loan, they are discussing moving into an apartment. I ignored it all. Similar to news from a faraway nation. I'd been responding to every crisis, real or imagined, for enough years. I was no longer the answer. I have nothing to do with it. All they knew was me in the past. The second letter then arrived, seemingly on time. This time, no envelope. Only a folded piece of lined paper was tucked beneath the guest house door. It has my name on it, and a wobbly pen. Kevin, we have committed a few errors, perhaps more than we thought. We're not flawless, and perhaps our expectations were too high. We are still your family, though. We're willing to consider a different approach if there is one. Tell us if you would like to speak. Parents. I read it for a long time while standing on the porch. I then turned it over. Almost as an afterthought, the handwriting is smaller and on the back. We're not looking for cash, only the possibility. I nearly fainted at that part. However, I had already watched this film. It's always the same setting. Pretend to be interested in conversing, rebuild, get back in touch. Then the truth is revealed. The rent is past due. The refrigerator quit working and the automobile broke down. And like gravity, their issues will eventually come full circle to me. This one I didn't shred. I nailed it to the guest house's inside wall. I did it to remind myself of what I had suffered, not out of sentimentality. I received one last communication a week later. This one was from an email sent by my dad. Clipped and short, as if he typed it quickly. We made an effort. No, you said. Well, anything. Without you, we'll figure it out. You idiot, enjoy your empty house. I spent a lot of time looking at that final line. Not because it was painful. It didn't. It was well known. He was classic. Inside the insult was the guilt trip. The idea that I was losing something by denying them what they want. Here's the problem, though. My home is not deserted. It doesn't include any shouting, no guilt, no anxiety, no forced grins, lurking in each room's nooks. Coffee is available on Sunday mornings. The kitchen is filled with laughter. Peace is in the air. Keep quiet. Firm peace. Free of restrictions, obligations, or secrets. If it puts them to sleep, they might continue to refer to it as nothingness. But fall made me feel fuller than ever before. There was a rhythm to everything. The messages and phone calls have ceased. The guest house's legal concerns were resolved. As promised, my parents had. I figured it out, in a way. They had reportedly relocated to a little condo on the outskirts of town. No porch, no yard, no space for a boat, for sure. Since the prior email, they have yet to contact me. The last send-off is the one with you, idiot. That wasn't what I expected to happen. Then one evening, it did. It was beyond 10 o'clock. I heard the knock while reading upstairs. Not the typical gentle tap for parcel delivery. It had a keen edge, again, too self-assured to be unintentional. I nearly couldn't believe what I saw as I peered out the window. Jake is standing on my doorstep wearing a sweatshirt and appears anxious, by themselves. I descended and partially opened the door. He didn't wait for me to say anything. If it weren't vital, I wouldn't be here. I shut the door behind me and went outdoors. Compared to when I last saw him, he appeared slimmer. His eyes had dark shadows under them. The easy assurance he formerly wore has been reduced to a raw state. He answered, "They're in trouble. Serious problems." I remained silent. Pushing his hands into his pockets, he moved. Dad took out a loan. Not from a financial institution. Someone from the area. When you fail to make a payment, do you know the type of individuals that don't write you a friendly letter? Jake looked around, and I blinked once. Other people besides Knox have been visiting them. People with threats are showing up at the condo. Mom is a complete mess. He didn't complete the phrase, but he's acting like it's okay. He went on to say that the first portion was unexpected. They require a destination, only for a short time. They also advised me to inquire about the possibility of letting them stay in the guest home. In fact, I gave a little sigh of astonishment and laughed, not out loud. Jake did not recoil. "They're desperate. I know that seems crazy." With the gentle yellow porch light shining on the gravel pathway leading to the guest house, I gazed out at the pitch-black yard. They attempted to reclaim that area, which they didn't believe I was entitled to. They now desired entry. I turned to face Jake again. "That's why you traveled so far?" He gave a nod. I reopened the door and entered halfway. I said, "You may tell them." "No." He seems to have anticipated that, and if they themselves appear, I didn't respond. Simply shut the door after me. Allow them to knock. Allow them to plead. It's too late.